welcome to Transfiguration Sunday at St. Paul Congregational United Church of Christ in Oskaloosa, Iowa. We are an open and affirming congregation, and we say, no matter who you are or where you are on life's journey, you are always welcome here with us, so you never have to check a piece of yourself at the door. Friends, we worship here at 501 High Avenue East every Sunday morning at 10 a.m., and we invite you to come and worship here in person with us. As I mentioned, today is Transfiguration Sunday, where we hear the familiar story of Jesus and three of his disciples going up Mount Horeb and coming down following a great revelation. Jesus transfigured before their very eyes. And we're talking about what new we might mine from this familiar story this year, in this place, in this time, with all that we are going through on our own. Friends, as we worship together, you are invited to ensure that you have done what you can to clear the clutter from around you, to turn off the noise on your phone if you're not watching this on your phone, to maybe mute the TV if you're not watching this on your TV, and to put aside anything that might distract you from knowing for yourself the nearness of God. Let us take a deep, centering breath together. Friends, welcome to worship. When we share signs of peace and words of namaste with one another, we are being in part evidence of the nearness of God. We experience God in our relationships and in creation, and so it's no wonder that we come to know God in even the smallest ways as we share God's presence among us with those around us. So during this time, you are invited to share the peace of Christ with those you're watching this with. And if you're watching this by yourself, do me a favor, send me a message and say, Pastor Melissa, peace be with you. And I promise I will always respond, peace also with you. Let us share the peace of Christ with one another.
A reading from the Gospel according to the writer we call Mark. Chapter 9, verses 2 through 9, hear what the Spirit is saying to you. 6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John and led them up a high mountain apart by themselves. And he was transfigured before them, and his clothes became dazzling white, such as no one on earth could bleach them. And there appeared to them Elijah with Moses, who were talking with Jesus. Then Peter said to Jesus, Rabbi, it is good for us to be here. Let us make 3 dwellings, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. He did not know what to say, for they were terrified. Then a cloud overshadowed them, and from the cloud there came a voice, This is my Son, the beloved. Listen to him. Suddenly, when they looked around, they saw no one with them anymore, but only Jesus. As they were coming down the mountain, he ordered them to tell no one about what they had seen, until after the Son of Man had risen from the dead. Here ends the reading that offers us insight on God. May God grant us wisdom and courage for interpretation.
Secrets breed suspicion. Insisting that others be secretive breeds even more suspicion, and for good reason. Most of us have enough life experience and have seen enough Law and Order SVU type shows to know that secrets are often the cloak of sinister and heinous acts. They keep victims trapped in silence. They keep antagonists in the position of the upper hand. They single-handedly power oppressive systems, and when shared, they are often the bedrock of destruction for those same systems, not to mention all the people caught up in them. So when I hear Jesus tell James and John and Peter to tell no one about what they saw up on the mountain, I'm a bit suspicious as well. Maybe my suspicions are merely a product of my experience with spiritual leaders, ordering silence in the face of cruelty that needs calling out. Or maybe it's because I simply don't understand why anyone would be allowed to see what the disciples saw, only to be told to keep quiet about it. They had seen their teacher transfigured, his clothes a dazzling white. They had seen their ancestors, prophets, long deceased, and they had been engulfed in a cloud, and from that cloud a voice had spoken to them the same truth that had been spoken over Jesus as he was raised up from the waters of the Jordan at his baptism. "This is my Son, the beloved," the voice told them from the cloud. Why on earth would anyone want to keep something so spectacular to themselves? Perhaps the caveat to Jesus' order of secrecy holds some kind of clue for us. The caveat being that Jesus doesn't demand they keep the wondrous sights from the mountaintop a secret forever. They can share it with others after the Son of Man has risen from the dead. And although Jesus had tried to explain it in the verses preceding this text, I'm not sure that these three disciples had any idea what he actually meant by that. We have the privileged position of knowing a bit more about what this means. It means that Jesus will continue his headlong collision course with the elders, the chief priests, and the scribes. He will continue his headlong collision course with the ways of Rome. He will continue to insist that the spirit of the law is more important than the letter of the law. And in so doing, he will anger enough people with enough power to eventually be executed for it. And after his death, a resurrection will occur. New life will spring forth in new and surprising ways. But after that, after all of that, Jesus says, the disciples can share what they saw and heard on the mountain that day with others. I understand the scene. Goodness sakes, we read a version of this story every year on Transfiguration Sunday, but I'm not sure I'll ever truly comprehend the need for secrecy. I know there are tons of people much smarter and far more theological than I will ever be who have put forward ideas and theories like the messianic secrecy motif and how the writer we call Mark uses it throughout his gospel readings. But secrets, even the best birthday party and Christmas present kind of secrets, demand that someone is kept in the dark. And I honestly don't think that any of us, for any reason, need any more time in the dark than we already spend there. The disciples certainly didn't. If what Jesus told them was true, he and every person around him were about to face some really dark days ahead. The disciples would lose their teacher, and some of them would eventually lose their lives trying to live the way they had been shown. And those who survived were going to have to figure out how to live in that darkness without letting it swallow them whole. They were going to have to be resilient in a reality that was begging them at every turn to be anything but, begging them to give up, to lie down, to stop moving, or worse, begging them to just get back to normal, to just get over the big, terrible thing and simply bounce back. But anyone who has ever found themselves in the dark places life eventually brings us all to will tell you that there is no such thing as bouncing back. In fact, according to Eric Greitens, it is an impossibility. He writes, life's reality is that we cannot bounce back. We cannot bounce back because we cannot go back in time to the people we used to be. The parent who loses a child never bounces back. The 19-year-old who sails for war is gone forever, even if he returns. You know that there is no bouncing back. There's only moving through. What happens to us becomes a part of us. Resilient people do not bounce back from hard experiences. They find healthy ways to integrate them into their lives. The only problem is that we aren't always sure how to do that. No one ever sits us down in school or sometime in our lives and teaches us how to be resilient, how to do the hard work of integration. How to, as Don Butcher says, merge our past selves with the present hard reality, thereby forging a transformed identity with a new future. We aren't given a playbook for how to handle the hard experiences that are inevitable parts of what it means to be human. And yet, in his command for secrecy, I think Jesus comes close. Because in that command, Jesus seems to point to an understanding of what it would take for the disciples and you and me to move through times of darkness. It would take us cultivating a resilient spirit. And a resilient spirit is born of preparation, not through dress rehearsing tragedy until we think that tragedy won't pull the rug out from under us, but preparation achieved through an active remembering of the moments God felt most near. For the disciples, this looked like remembering what happened up on that mountain. It looked like remembering the blinding light, the dazzling white, and the appearance of ancestors. It looked like remembering the cloud, the voice that came from it, and the feeling of awe and wonder that had filled them that day. For us, it looks different. As people who so often feel the nearness of God in our relationships with others and with creation, it looks like remembering certain moments. Like remembering the first time someone said, "I love you" to us, and the first time we knew that they actually meant it. It looks like remembering the first time we held our child in our arms, or the first time we learned that our baby would be having a baby of their own. It looks like the sunset that brought us to tears, but also gave us an undeniable sense that everything was going to be okay. It's the kiss that we didn't know would be the last. It's the flower that bloomed defiantly through the cracks of broken concrete. It's catching the scent in the air of someone we'll never forget, or the exhale we breathed the moment we finally decided to let go. Howard Thurman once wrote that resilience is to watch a gathering darkness until all light is swallowed up completely without the power to interfere or bring a halt. Then in that darkness, to continue one's journey with one's footsteps guided by the illumination of remembered radiance. Which means that our ability to move through the darkness and move through the hard times in our lives is actually no secret at all. It is a product of our remembered radiance. It's a collection of all the illuminating, light-filled, love-drenched moments of our lives that we have gathered and held onto as close as a secret. A secret we will whisper when the darkness closes in and the unthinkable not only becomes thinkable, but is our new hard reality. When we find ourselves in that place where we are powerless to do anything to stop or even pause the dying of the light, the promise to those disciples, and you and me, is that we will not be left alone to stumble around in the dark. We will not be left with nothing to guide our footsteps as we make our way along the valley floor. We will be left with the light of all the awe and all the joy that we allowed ourselves to soften into, and that light will illumine our path. And we will know for ourselves what those first disciples came to know in the days and weeks after they followed Jesus down the mountain. We will know what it is to let those moments we've been holding help hold us. As we make this turn from the season of light and divine revelation that we call Epiphany, and turn toward the long 40 days and 40 nights of self-examination and wilderness wandering that we call Lent, may our remembered radiance, whatever that looks like for us, light our path. Not so that we can bounce back to who we once were before we entered the wilderness, but so that we will move through it, knowing that we have been held by the very nearness of God. Amen. Friends, the secret's out. God is near to us. God is so near to us, so close as a tightly held secret. And that nearness to God is what will bring us through our wilderness, that will bring us through our hard and difficult times, that will bring us through the darkness we encounter until light again shines in our lives once more. So my friends, go now, knowing that what you have held so close to you will hold you in the next 40 days and nights. And as you go, may God bless you and keep you. May God make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. May God look upon you with favor and bring you peace. Amen.